They mocked him when he adopted two blind 9-year-old sisters, but 20 years later, gasps filled the sky as a luxury helicopter touched down, carrying the girls everyone once pitied. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. It's always powerful to see. Now, on to the story. The sunlight glanced off the bus's long panes as Rafael Moreno eased the vehicle to the curb. Brakes sighed, doors folded open with a hiss, and the hum of mid-afternoon traffic drifted in. Two white canes tapped the pavement in quick, deliberate rhythm. The twins again, 9 years old, moving as if the street itself whispered directions only they could hear. Mira stepped first, bold and precise, her chin tilted like she dared the city to move against her. Lena followed close, her cane sweeping a half-beat behind, her sister's orbit shielding her from the bustle of horns and hurried feet. Rafe killed the engine. Against every unwritten rule of the schedule, he let the silence stretch, giving them the street without rush. Passengers glanced at their watches, restless, but he ignored them. He had spent too many years measuring life by seconds, counting them under his breath whenever the anxiety returned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A ritual. Today he counted slower. His toolbox sat beside the driver's seat, dented and older than the bus itself. He had been an engineer once until a whistle blow shoved him down to this seat and a lifetime of roots. He thought he had lost everything then, but watching the twins, he wondered if losing had prepared him to notice details no one else cared to see. The way Mira angled her head to identify the hiss of the door, the way Lena brushed her fingers lightly over the bus frame as she stepped up. Touch as compass, sound as map. Front door closest to the tactile strip, Mira asked suddenly, her voice steady but cautious. Rafe surprised himself. Instead of pointing, he stepped down, gently guiding her small hand to the rubber ridges on the threshold. Here, he said, his voice quieter than the engine ticking down. This one. She nodded once, memorizing the distance, the feel, and something like trust flickered in her unclouded gaze. By the time he slid back into the seat, the buzz of conversation among passengers had shifted. A young man in a hoodie was watching something on his phone, the sound up just enough for others to overhear. A reporter's voice crackled through cheap speakers. Breaking! Self-made investor Adrian Vale announces intent to adopt blind 9-year-old twins from Oak Ridge Children's Home. The bus erupted in smirks, a chorus of cynicism. PR stunt, someone muttered. Buying sympathy. Who adopts kids that old? Rafe's grip on the wheel tightened. On screen, Vale adjusted his tie, a practiced smile failing to mask his nerves. Behind him, in the frame, Mira and Lena stood stiff and unsure. The jeers filled the air, until one sound cut through. Rafe clapped. Once, then again. The noise startled even him. The passengers stared as though he'd broken some sacred neutrality of the driver's seat. But Mira, standing near the fare box, turned her head toward the rhythm, eyes unfocused, but exact. She tilted her face toward the sound of his hands and held still, memorizing him. Outside, the late sun threw long shadows across Oak Ridge's brick walls. Across the street, a black sedan idled, windows tinted dark. Rafe noted the plate without thinking, scribbling it into his worn notebook with the same precision he'd once used to log defective circuits. Something about the angle of the car, the patience of its engine, needled him. At the next light, a news crawl rolled across the rider's phone. Adrian Vale adopts twins, Mira and Lena Spencer. Rafe's hands went cold. Spencer. The name clawed at him from another lifetime, printed in black across a sealed envelope buried in the back of his closet, stamped with the code, Incident 847R. He had carried its weight for years, hidden, but never forgotten. Now, as the bus lurched forward, the syllables echoed louder than the engine itself, and the careful seconds he always counted began to break apart. The following morning, rain polished the city streets to a black mirror. Rafe guided Bus 17 along its route, windshield wipers drumming like restless fingers. The twins weren't at their stop. He caught himself searching anyway, eyes flicking toward the Oak Ridge gates, waiting for two canes to strike the curb in perfect rhythm. Only a huddle of staff stood outside, whispering beneath umbrellas, their voices carrying just enough for Rafe to catch the words. Adoption papers, headlines, Vale's stunt. By mid-shift, the story was everywhere. Every passenger with a phone seemed to be watching the same clip. Adrian Vale, crisp suit gleaming, announcing he was adopting Mira and Lena Spencer. The press laughed more than the crowd did. Commentators dissected it like a stock deal. Optics, image rehabilitation. They picked at his motives until there was nothing left but suspicion. Rafe's jaw clenched. All they saw were optics. None of them saw the girls. At a red light, his eyes shifted to the curb. The black sedan again. Same tinted glass, same idle patience. He couldn't read the driver's face, but the stillness was too deliberate. He tapped the wheel, counting seconds under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sedan lingered, then pulled away. He scribbled the plate into his notebook again. The ink smudged, but the numbers remained. That evening, he parked the bus at the depot, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. His supervisor barely looked at him as he signed out. Rafe preferred it that way. He wanted quiet, but the quiet cracked when a voice, small, deliberate, called across the depot floor. "Which door is closest to the tactile strip here?" Mira. She stood just inside the depot, cane in one hand, notebook in the other. Rainwater dripped from her hair. Lena lingered behind her, silent but watchful. Rafe froze, toolbox half lifted from the bus. "You shouldn't be here," he said, more gruffly than intended. "You didn't answer," Mira pressed, her head tilted, catching every echo of the cavernous space. "Front door? Side?" He set down the box and walked over. No pointing this time, no shortcuts. He took her hand gently, guiding it across the ridges of the rubber strip until her fingertips landed on the frame. "There," he said. She nodded once. "You don't tell, you show." The simplicity of it cut through him. That night, Rafe didn't sleep. He pulled down the old envelope from the back of his closet, the one stamped Incident 847R. His hand trembled on the seal. Inside were pages brittle with age, a traffic light override log, a list of maintenance crews, and a blurred photograph from the crash that killed the Spencers' parents. He hadn't been the cause, but he'd been first on the scene. He remembered sirens screaming from blocks away, too late. He remembered two tiny voices crying out as smoke curled from twisted metal. He had cut them free with the box cutter still in his toolbox, and afterward, he'd been told to shut up, to forget the inconsistencies, to bury the evidence. He had obeyed, until now. The next morning, the bus filled with chatter. Passengers dissected Vale's press conference, mocking his charity case. Rafe barely heard them. Halfway through the route, the twins appeared at the stop again, but this time with Adrian Vale himself. He stood awkwardly, expensive umbrella shielding the girls. They wore new coats, but their canes tapped the ground with the same steady rhythm. The whispers began immediately. "That's him. The billionaire with the blind girls. Publicity stunt." Vale's jaw tightened, but he kept his arm steady as he guided the twins toward the bus. Mira paused at the steps, lifting her head. 17 seconds late, she said. Rafe blinked. "What?" "Your bus," she explained. "We track by the engine echo when it passes Oak Ridge. You're usually within 2 seconds. Today you were 17 late." Rafe let out a short laugh despite himself. Rain messes with the lights. Vale looked between them, bemused. "She times buses now?" "She notices everything," Rafe said, his voice lower than he intended. Mira smiled faintly, as if the approval mattered more than she'd admit. As the bus pulled away, Rafe saw the black sedan again, 2 cars back, keeping distance. He checked his mirror once, then again. Still there. He reached for his notebook, jotting down the plate number a 3rd time. His gut told him this wasn't coincidence. Halfway down Broadway, Vale leaned toward him. "I've read your file, Mr. Moreno," he said quietly. Rafe stiffened. Vale's tone wasn't mocking, it was curious. "Former engineer, whistleblower, you're not supposed to be here driving a bus." "I go where I'm told," Rafe muttered. Vale studied him a moment longer, then looked at Mira and Lena, who were whispering equations to each other as though the chaos around them didn't exist. "Maybe not anymore," Vale said. Rafe didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the mirror, where the sedan was still there, steady as a shadow. He tapped the wheel again, counting seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in his gut, he knew something was coming, and the rhythm he'd lived by his whole life was about to break. Rain slicked down the depot's metal roof, hissing like static as Rafe sat hunched over his kitchen table, the envelope spread open under a single lamp. The seal of NCI. Dent 847R looked obscene in its neatness, like it belonged in a vault, not on his scarred wood. His hands, grease-stained, knuckled from years of gripping wheels and tools, shook as he unfolded the pages again. There it was, a maintenance log stamped in faded ink. Signal override, Route 17 intersection. Operator ID, M. Renner. And beneath it, the accident report no one ever read aloud in court. Words choked the page. Light malfunction. Both directions green. Collision with Spencer family sedan. Fatalities, 2. His throat tightened. He remembered the night clear as smoke. He had been younger then, still an engineer, riding off shift when the world seemed to split open in screeching metal and glass. He'd pulled 2 children from fire, their small hands sticky with blood, their eyes wide and blind already from the smoke. Mira had coughed his name once, though they'd never met. He'd sworn to testify, to explain the override. Instead, the department sealed it. The contractor disappeared, and he'd been warned off, demoted, punished into silence. Now the Spencers were back in his life, no longer voices in memory, but children climbing his bus every morning. And Adrian Vale, the billionaire who could have chosen anyone, was the one who brought them out. Rafe closed the envelope, heart pounding. He should have burned it years ago. Now it was a fuse waiting for fire. The next day, the city swirled with Vale's face on billboards, his announcement dissected by every anchor in New York. Calculated philanthropy, one said. A rebranding move, sneered another. Meanwhile, Mira and Lena trailed him into meetings, silent but listening, their canes clicking like metronomes. That evening, Rafe parked at the Oak Ridge stop, expecting the twins. Instead, it was Vale who boarded, soaked from rain, an umbrella in one hand and impatience in his eyes. "We need to talk," Vale said. Rafe frowned, motioning him to sit. "This is a bus, not an office." "Exactly," Vale replied, lowering his voice. "No cameras here." He leaned forward, voice razor thin. "I know about the accident." Rafe froze. "What do you think you know?" "Enough," Vale said, eyes narrowing. "Mira mentioned the way you touch the tactile strips, the way you count seconds. She trusts you. That's dangerous, for both of us." Rafe's fist tightened on the wheel. "You think I'm dangerous?" "I think someone wants to use her memory," Vale said. "She repeats details, dates, plates, names. That kind of mind doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. If she learns what really happened to her parents, it won't just be about family, it'll be about war." Before Rafe could answer, the headlights of the black sedan flared in his side mirror. It rolled past the stop, slow, deliberate. Mira had been right, 17 seconds late yesterday, but today, right on time. Rafe scribbled the plate again, but Vale reached over, stilling his pen. "Don't bother. They cycle them. Whoever they are, they're careful. Too careful." Something in Vale's tone, resigned, almost protective, told Rafe this wasn't the first time he'd noticed. That night, Rafe dreamed of the crash. He woke at 3:17 a.m., drenched in sweat, the sound of twisting steel still ringing in his ears. He opened the envelope again, but this time he saw something he'd missed. A second sheet, faint carbon copy, a diagram of the traffic light circuitry. And there, scrawled in different ink, one phrase: "If anything happens, tell my girls, trust the sound that waits." Signed, Eliza Spencer. His stomach lurched. Their mother had left a message hidden in an engineering schematic. How had he never seen it? The following morning, Mira boarded first. Her hand brushed the toolbox he always kept by his seat. "Why do you carry this every day?" she asked suddenly. "It's habit," he said. "No," she pressed. "It's something else." Rafe hesitated, then leaned closer. "Because once, I had to cut 2 little girls out of a car with what was inside." Mira froze. Her grip tightened on her cane. "What car?" Silence swallowed the bus. Passengers muttered behind them, impatient, but the city outside seemed to fade. Rafe's counting tick rose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His chest heaved. "Yours," he said finally. Mira's lips parted. For a moment, her confident mask cracked. She turned toward the sound of his breathing, her unseeing eyes locking on him with uncanny precision. "You were there." "Yes." His voice was raw. "I saved you, and I've carried that night every day since." Her hand trembled as she clutched the rail. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I was told not to," he whispered. "And because I was afraid the truth would hurt you more than the silence." Lena's voice, soft but cutting, came from behind her. The silence hurt more. The bus rolled on, brakes squealing at intersections, but inside, the world was still. Rafe felt the gulf widen between them. He had tried to shield them, but instead, he had betrayed them. At the next stop, Adrian Vale climbed aboard again, his expression stormy. "Get off this bus," he hissed at the twins. "Now!" Mira straightened, jaw set. "Not until he finishes." Vale's gaze flicked between them, his composure slipping. "You don't understand what's at stake." "Then explain," Mira demanded. For the first time, Vale faltered. He sat, shoulders sagging, and pressed his palms together. "Your parents weren't just scientists," he said. "They were building something, an algorithm, something the wrong people wanted. The crash wasn't random. It was a warning." The words detonated between them. Mira inhaled sharply, Rafe's fists clenched on the wheel. From the corner of his eye, he saw it, the sedan again. Shadow. Seeing them across two intersections, headlights steady. Not following Mira, not following Vale, following him. He didn't finish the route. At the next depot turnoff, he swung the bus sharply, brakes shrieking, tires throwing up spray. Passengers shouted, clinging to poles. He pulled into the dim cavern of the garage and cut the engine. The silence roared. Mira gripped the cane like a blade. "They're not after us," she whispered. "They're after you." Rafe's hands trembled on the envelope in his jacket pocket. He had wanted to keep the truth buried, but the truth was alive, hunting him down, and now it had found the girls again. The depot's cavernous silence hung thick after the last bus rolled out. Fluorescents hummed, a nervous buzz that seemed too loud in the empty space. Rafe killed the engine of Route 17, his hands still trembling on the wheel. Mira and Lena sat behind him, their white canes across their laps like slender swords. Adrian Vale stood in the aisle, his expensive suit damp from the storm, his tie crooked, his expression shadowed with something close to fear. "They're following me," Rafe said at last, voice low, each word scraped raw. "Not you, not Vale, me." Mira tilted her head, her braid brushing her shoulder. She had that uncanny way of fixing her unseeing eyes directly on him, as if she could hear the exact contour of his thoughts. "Because of the night," she said, "because of the crash." Vale's jaw tightened. "You mean the incident they buried?" "I mean the one I watched happen," Rafe shot back. "Both lights green. Spencer Carr didn't stand a chance. I pulled them out myself." The weight of those words fell hard. For the first time, Lena spoke above a whisper, "And you stayed silent." His chest hollowed at her tone. "I tried," he said, "but the city sealed it. My job, my career, it vanished the moment I asked the wrong questions. They told me to drive and keep my mouth shut, so I did." Vale took a slow breath, his eyes scanning the depot windows. "Then whoever ours in that sedan isn't following you by mistake. They're protecting something old, something they thought was dead." Rafe reached into his jacket, drew out the weathered envelope, and slid the faded schematic across the dashboard. "Your mother," he said, his voice softer now, turning toward Mira, "left this message hidden in the wiring diagram. I never saw it until yesterday." Mira's hands found the page. Her fingers skimmed the raised creases, tracing ink she couldn't see but somehow felt. Her lips moved as she read silently, committing every word to memory. "If anything happens, tell my girls, trust the sound that waits." "What sound?" Lena whispered. Before anyone could answer, tires squealed outside. Headlights cut across the depot wall. The black sedan rolled into the hangar, engine humming like a predator's purr. Its beams swept over metal and shadow, landing finally on bus 17. Vale's voice dropped to a hiss. "We need to move, now." Rafe shoved the envelope back into his jacket, grabbed his dented toolbox, and yanked the bus door shut. The sedan idled 10 yards away, too quiet, too patient. Then its doors opened in perfect synchronicity. Two men stepped out, dark coats, clean shoes that didn't belong in a depot. Their movements weren't hurried, they had time. They knew the fear was already working. "Stay behind me," Rafe ordered, his voice sharp. He felt the familiar tick rise in his throat, the number steadying him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Vale pulled his phone, but the screen stayed dark. Jammed. Rafe cursed under his breath. Of course they'd block signal. Mira's cane tapped once against the floor. "They're spreading," she said. Her hearing caught it, footsteps fanning out across the concrete. "One left, one right, waiting for us to panic." Vale looked at her, startled. "You can hear that?" "She can hear more than you see," Rafe muttered. "And she's right." The men closed in. Rafe's grip tightened on the metal handle of his toolbox. He wasn't armed, but steel and weight would do. He'd fought bigger with less. Still, his gut screamed this wasn't a fight he could win with fists. Mira suddenly spoke, quick and clear. "The bus's side door. It opens toward the service ramp. 17 steps down, then Echo splits. 2 exits, one to the alley, one to the yard." Rafe blinked at her. "You've never been here." She gave the faintest smile. "Sound maps everything. The roof is high. The echoes told me." Vale's eyes widened, but there was no time for wonder. Rafe yanked the side door lever. It groaned open, and the 4 of them slipped into the shadows just as one of the men's flashlights sliced the bus interior. A voice cursed in the dark. "Go," Rafe hissed, counting under his breath, guiding the twin steps. Mira moved with eerie certainty, her hand brushing the wall, her count matching his. 17 steps. At the bottom, the air split. One side smelled of oil and asphalt, the other of wet brick and open night. "Left," Mira said instantly. "The echo's shorter. That's the alley." They ran. Shoes slapped wet ground, breath came ragged. Behind them, footsteps quickened. Vale pulled Mira along. Rafe kept Lena close. The alley opened onto the street, neon bleeding through. Rain. For a heartbeat, freedom shimmered. Then the second sedan slid into view at the alley mouth, cutting them off. Rafe skidded to a halt, toolbox raised like a shield. The driver stepped out slowly, umbrella blooming above him. He wasn't like the others. His suit was immaculate, his shoes polished despite the rain. His face was smooth, calm, but his eyes were wrong. Dead calm, the kind that calculated before speaking. "Mr. Moreno," he said, voice crisp. "Still carrying ghosts." Rafe froze. He knew that voice. Years ago, across a table in a dim city office, that voice had told him, "Stop digging or you'll bury yourself." Marcus Renner, Vale breathed, recognition dripping with disgust. The man inclined his head as if greeting an equal. "Adrian, still trying to buy your soul clean?" Vale's fists clenched, but Renner ignored him, his gaze fixed on Rafe. "You should have burned that envelope, driver. Some doors stay closed for good reason." Mira stepped forward before anyone could stop her. Her voice was steady, deliberate. "You killed our parents." Renner's smile was thin. "Accidents happen." "No," she said, her unseeing eyes burning with focus. "Lights don't change themselves. You changed them." Silence cut through the rain. For a moment, even Renner faltered at her certainty. Rafe shifted, placing himself in front of the girls. "You're not touching them." Renner sighed. "You mistake me, Moreno. They're valuable, yes, but not in the way you think. They're minds. Their mother's legacy lives in them. That algorithm could have remade everything. And you," he pointed with calm precision, "you kept the proof alive when all you had to do was let it die." Rafe's jaw tightened. Then maybe it's time someone finally listened. For the first time, Renner's mask cracked. "Careful," he warned. "You're still just a bus driver, and bus drivers disappear every day." The sound of distant sirens pierced the night. Someone, maybe a depot worker, had called it in. Renner's calm returned as quickly as it had slipped. He gave a small nod to his men. "Not tonight, then. But this isn't finished." The sedans rolled away, their red taillights bleeding into the rain. The four of them stood in the alley, soaked and shaking. Vale finally exhaled. "You just painted targets on all of us." "They already were there," Rafe muttered. He looked at Mira, who was still standing tall despite the tremor in her hand. Her words echoed louder than the sirens. "You killed our parents." It wasn't accusation. It was prophecy, and now that it had been spoken, there was no burying it again. 2 decades slipped like smoke through the city's skyline, and yet Rafe still found himself counting seconds under his breath when storms rolled in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His pulse had slowed over the years, but the habit had not. He was no longer behind the wheel of Route 17. Retirement papers hung framed in his modest apartment, though his real title now lived in headlines. Rafael Moreno, whistleblower turned hero, Deputy Commissioner of Transit Safety. He had grown old into respect he never sought. Still, when he opened his weathered toolbox, kept on a shelf like an altar, he remembered that night in the depot, the men in coats, the way Mira had spoken the truth aloud. "You killed our parents." Mira and Lena were no longer children. At 29, they moved through the world with a confidence that unsettled even those who had laughed at them decades earlier. Adrian Vale had given them his name, but they had taken his foundation and rebuilt it into something larger, Skyly. Mobility, their company, was more than an empire of technology. It was a movement, a revolution built on their unique minds. They called it complementary cognition computing, a system born from the way they thought together, Mira sequentially, Lena abstractly, 2 halves of a single symphony. Their breakthrough had transformed not only transit but medicine, finance, even defense. Neural networks reprogrammed in their image. Governments licensed their models. Investors fought for shares. Yet for all their power, the twins remained unnervingly private, their lives shielded from the circus of fame. They spoke rarely, but when they did, finishing each other's sentences with the same eerie synchronicity as when they were children, people listened as if the future itself had opened its mouth. On a crisp October morning, Vale's penthouse overlooked a city draped in gold light. The man himself, 60 now, carried more weight in his shoulders and more gray in his beard. Success had not freed him, it had cornered him. The twins sat across from him, poised in business attire, their white canes resting at their sides like scepters. Rafe leaned against the window, arms folded, watching, listening. "You've outpaced Harrington Tech, Nakamura Systems, even Chen Robotics," Vale said, voice tight, "but Marcus Renner still holds the patents you never took back." Mira tilted her head. "He has paper." Lena finished. "We have proof." Rafe frowned. Proof isn't always enough, not with men like him. Vale slid a folder across the table. Inside were photocopied subpoenas, court filings, endless motions. He's opening a new front, Vale said bitterly, claiming that anything you developed as my dependence is legally his. He says Skyline Mobility belongs to Harrington Tech through me, through you. The twins exchanged their silent communication, heads turning slightly in tandem. Then Mira spoke. So he wants to steal not just our past, Lena. He wants our future too. The weight in their words turned the penthouse colder. That afternoon, Rafe walked with them through the Skyline labs. The air buzzed with servers, the walls alive with textured maps and braille labels. Young engineers trailed after the twins, eager to learn. Yet beneath the hum of innovation, a darker thread ran. Rafe caught it in hushed conversations, in quick glances at security monitors. The company's internal system had logged multiple breach attempts in the last month. Not amateurs, professionals, adaptive code. He cornered the head of cybersecurity, a gaunt man named Torres. Who's behind it? Torres swallowed. We don't have proof, but the signatures, they match Renner's old projects. He's probing, testing. Rafe's jaw tightened. The ghosts had found new weapons. That night, as the city drowned in neon, the twins called Rafe into their private office. On the table lay a device, small, sleek, humming faintly. What is it? Rafe asked. Mira's voice was soft. Our father's algorithm. Lena added, finished. Rafe blinked. What do you mean, finished? We decrypted our mother's ledger, Mira said, her unseeing eyes steady. The one hidden in 847. The sound that waits wasn't just words. It was an audio key, a resonance frequency encoded in the depot lights. When we aligned it with the city's grid recordings, the lock opened. Lena leaned forward. Inside was the completed model, neural cognition maps, the architecture of a system that can think in duality. Rafe felt his stomach drop. That's what Renner's been after all these years. Yes, Mira whispered. And now it exists. Fully. Silence thickened. Then you're in danger, Rafe said flatly. More than ever. Before they could answer, Vale burst in, his phone still in his hand. His face was ashen. Renner's filed an injunction, he said. He's demanding custody of your algo. Rhythm under corporate guardianship law. He's claiming you're unfit to hold intellectual property that was developed under his supervision. Lena's lips pressed tight. He wants us erased. Rafe stepped forward. Then fight him in court. Show the world what he did. Vale shook his head. He owns too many judges, too many board members. If you go into that courtroom, he'll twist the story until you are the thieves. Mira stood slowly, her expression calm, unflinching. Then we don't wait for the courtroom. What are you saying? Rafe asked. Her voice carried the same clarity it had when she was 9, standing on a bus and pointing toward the tactile strip. We take it back, not through paper, through proof, through truth. That night, Skyline Mobility launched an encrypted live stream, something the twins had been preparing quietly for months. Broadcast not to shareholders, but to the public. The stream opened with Rafe's weathered face, his voice steady. He told the story he had carried for decades. The crash, the override, the sealed envelope marked 847R. He laid it bare. Then Mira and Lena stepped into frame, their words precise, overlapping, undeniable. They spoke of their parents' legacy, of the algorithm hidden in resonance, of the years of silence. They spoke not as victims, but as architects of the future. They unveiled the completed algorithm, not for Renner, not for Vale, but for the world. This is not property, Mira said. It is possibility, Lena finished. The stream detonated across the globe. Within hours, governments, universities, and ordinary citizens echoed the story. Hashtags trended, crowds gathered outside Skyline headquarters. Renner's name spread like a stain, but power doesn't surrender quietly. The following morning, Skyline's servers buckled under the most sophisticated cyberattack yet. Lights flickered across the building, alarms shrieking. Auras ran screaming through the control room. It's inside. Renner's code, everywhere. Rafe grabbed his old toolbox, heart pounding. What does he want? Mira's head tilted, listening. Not to break us. Lena, to erase us. The building shook as systems overloaded, monitors splintering into static. Rafe counted seconds under his breath, forcing calm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For the first time, Mira joined him, her voice low, matching his rhythm. Together, they steadied the storm, and then, over the chaos, Mira whispered words that chilled him. He's not attacking from the outside. Lena's fingers flew across the console. Her voice dropped. He's inside already. The Skyline headquarters trembled as if the building itself feared collapse. Alarms wailed, red strobes pulsed across the glass walls, and the massive servers that housed the twins' life's work flickered under siege. Rafe stood in the control room, toolbox in hand, while lines of code scrolled like falling rain across every monitor. Torres, pale and sweating, shouted above the din. He's not just hacking our systems, he's rewriting them. Every safeguard is turning against us. Vale slammed a fist against the console. Cut the connections. Pull the damn plug. We can't, Torres cried. It's everywhere. The moment we disconnect, the payload will trigger. Total wipe. Mira and Lena sat at the central console, their fingers racing across braille keyboards, ears tuned to the audio output streaming faster than any sighted engineer could process. Their heads tilted in sync, their lips moving in silent communication. It's not random, Mira said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Lena's brow furrowed. The patterns are familiar. Too familiar. Rafe's heart sank. What do you mean? Mira turned toward him, her unseeing eyes glowing with a terrible clarity. He's not just using our father's algorithms, he's using ours. A chill knifed through the room. Impossible, Vale said. Those were encrypted, locked away. No system is unbreakable, Lena murmured, especially one designed to think like we do. He's mirrored our minds against us. The room shook as another wave hit the servers. Monitors went black one by one. The building groaned. Rafe's hand clenched around his toolbox. Then how do we stop him? The twins exchanged that uncanny look, a whole conversation flickering between them in silence. Mira's jaw set. By becoming unpredictable. They dove back into the storm of code, speaking aloud now, voices overlapping like a symphony in chaos. Sequential break. Pattern disruption. Introduce noise, not logic. Vale stared at them in awe. They're improvising? Rafe nodded grimly. They're jazzing against a machine that only knows sheet music. Minutes bled into hours. Sweat slicked their temples, but the twins pressed on, weaving a counter-algorithm so unorthodox it bordered on madness. Systems flared, faltered, then stabilized. Barely. And then, amidst the cacophony, a single ping echoed from the servers. Not Renner's. Different. Deeper. A lock opening. Mira froze. Do you hear it? Lena's lips parted. The sound that waits. The words hit Rafe like a hammer. He pulled the old envelope from his jacket, the one he'd never let go. Inside, the faded schematic with Eliza Spencer's hidden note. His hands trembled as he laid it on the console. She meant this. It wasn't just a warning, it was a key. Mira leaned close, ears straining. It's a frequency buried in the system, a mother's failsafe. Lena typed furiously, aligning their defense with the resonance. She anticipated this. She knew someone would try to weaponize us. The servers roared back to life, brighter, sharper. Renner's code shrieked in protest, twisting against itself. For a heartbeat, it looked like they had him. And then the monitors lit up with a new feed. Marcus Renner's face filled the screens. Ends, calm and venomous. Well done, he said, his voice silk over steel. Your mother was brilliant, but brilliance alone doesn't win. Control does. And I've had control of this game from the start. Vale snarled. You've already lost. The world knows the truth. Renner smirked. Truth. His eyes flicked to Mira and Lena. The world will see what I show them. And what I show them is this. Your algorithm erasing itself from existence, with your fingerprints all over it. The screens shifted, displaying falsified logs. Mira and Lena authorizing the breach, wiping their own legacy. Torres gasped. He's framing them. Rafe slammed his fist down. Over my dead body. Renner's smile widened. That can be arranged. The screens blinked, and suddenly the building's automated locks sealed. Steel shutters clanged down over the exits. The lights dimmed. They were trapped. Mira's voice cut through the panic. He's not just here in code. He's here in the building. As if on cue, the heavy thud of footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Armed men in black poured into the corridors, weapons glinting. Vale turned to Rafe. We can't fight them, not like this. Rafe's hand tightened on the toolbox. We don't have to fight, we have to stall. He swung the box open, pulling out wires, clamps, old circuit boards, the relics of a man who once knew how to make the city's veins sing. His fingers moved faster than they had in years, rigging a bypass into the building's emergency grid. Mira and Lena leaned close, syncing with him. 5 steps left. Connector at 2 o'clock. Resistance too high, add another loop. Together they rewired the heart of the building in minutes, an impossible dance of sightless precision and weary instinct. The lights flickered, then flared blinding white. The shutters groaned open. The mercenaries stumbled, blinded. Rafe barked, "Run!" They bolted through the corridors, alarms howling. Rafe counted seconds to keep steady. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mira echoed him, her voice strong. For the first time, he wasn't leading her. She was keeping pace with him. They burst onto the rooftop, the night wind slamming into them. Below, the city stretched in glittering indifference. Above, rotor blades thundered. A helicopter descended. Renner's. Its searchlight pinned them in a harsh circle of white. Renner himself leaned out the side, headset gleaming, face twisted in triumph. It ends tonight. But Mira lifted her chin, fearless. No, tonight, it begins. She raised her cane, tapping once on the rooftop. The sound reverberated, amplified by the resonance Eliza had hidden. The frequency pulsed outward, invisible, but undeniable. The servers below surged, the live stream reactivated, broadcasting everything. The false logs, Renner's threats, his mercenaries, his face in the helicopter, exposed to millions. Lena shouted over the roar, "We've turned his control into his confession." Renner's composure cracked. "No," he screamed, leaning too far. The helicopter lurched, his headset ripped free, his voice drowned in static. The craft veered, spun, and with a shriek of metal, vanished into the night beyond the skyline. Silence followed, broken only by the chop of retreating blades. Vale collapsed to his knees, gasping. Torres cheered weakly, but Rafe stood tall, his hand on Mira's shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. Mira shook her head. "We didn't do it alone." She turned toward him, her unseeing eyes soft now. "You kept the sound alive." Lena added, voice trembling, "You were our mother's last witness, and now you're our proof." Rafe's throat tightened. For decades he had carried guilt like a shackle, but now, in their words, he felt it break. The world erupted in the days that followed. Renner was declared dead after the crash, though rumors swirled. Investigations unearthed his shell companies, his sabotage of the Spencer's accident, his years of theft. Vale stepped back from the spotlight, content to let the twins lead, and they did. Months later, at a ceremony in the rebuilt transit hub, Mira and Lena unveiled Project 847, a global initiative to rewire cities with safety systems modeled on complementary cognition, accessible, adaptive, resilient. They handed the first medal to Rafe. His hands shook as the ribbon settled on his chest. "I'm no hero," he muttered. Mira smiled. "Heroes don't call themselves heroes." The crowd roared, cameras flashed. For the first time in decades, Rafe didn't count the seconds. He simply let them pass, free,